happy day. I was going to say we're recording on Wednesday, but people listen to this on a different day. So
happy day.
That intro didn't work the way I was hoping it would.
I'm going to start saying that to people. Happy day.
No, everyone knows that if you're from Philly, what do you say when you see someone on the street, Jen?
Go Eagles.
Go Birds.
Oh, say.
We don't say happy day here. You just walk by someone, you just say go Birds in like a slightly depressed way. Go Birds.
Go
That's
Birds. Even
unless
when it's not
actually
football season?
Yes. Oh, at all times. But if it's actually football season, then you say go Birds. But the rest of the year, it's just like go Birds.
What about like starting the chant? Aggressive?
In South Philly, no. In Center City, maybe.
Yeah. This depends where I am.
Different regions.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right. I'm going to try that on and I'm going to see what happens.
I think it's a great idea.
Right?
Intro question. Are you ready for it?
I'm so ready. I'm prepped.
I actually, you know what's funny? I read this and I was like, I actually don't know Jen's answer.
Really?
Yes. Do you clear your emails to 0 each day, or do you have a bunch of unread emails at any given time?
I could never have unread emails. But this is why I am so bad at reading emails, because I need to get rid of the notification, but like I'm not actually reading them.
Yeah. But that's why your reading comprehension is not good.
Well, I'm just like, if I'm doing something and I see the notification, I just have to get rid of the notification. So I'll look at it very quickly to just be like, okay, like just to like try to clock it in my head and get rid of the notification, but then it goes away.
So something we do in our business is if an email comes in that's important, I call Jen and I say, did you see your email? And she usually goes, no. But now what I know is that you open the email, because part of me, when I read this question, I was like, oh, maybe Jen does have like 800, like my good friend Liz, who lives in DC. Liz has like something like 9,000 unread emails on her phone. I should ask her to screenshot me what she has right now.
I could
never. And even when I get junk mail, I unsubscribe immediately or I delete it.
So that's my new favorite thing to do in the
unsubscribe.
morning. Is instead of like get up and get on social media, I go through because you have so much junk in the morning. For some reason, all come in the morning. And so my favorite thing to do is instead of get on social media is unsubscribe from all that junk. But for some reason it just keeps coming.
And nonstop.
Right.
Which is usually just because I buy something new online.
Right. That could be it too.
It's usually that it's because I all of a sudden am subscribed to something that I have no idea where they came from.
Well, I also think sometimes the unsubscribe like section, it tries to trick you.
Yes. Yeah, they
do. It's like, are you sure you don't want to maybe not receive emails anymore? And you're like, I'm not. There's so many double negatives that like I don't know anymore. And I don't know who I am.
Well, it's like an SAT question.
Yeah.
Okay, so for me with the emails here, I usually have about 5 unread emails at all time. And here's what these are. It's not that they're unread. It's that I marked them as unread to tell myself to go back to them, and I have not. So if you have emailed me in the past month and you haven't heard from me, you're in there. I just haven't gotten there yet. But usually, it's a reminder, if you try to email the therapy group for something, Jen and I are useless. Email Nikki.
Useless. Just terrible. We do our best, but we have like 1 million.
Do we? I don't think so.
But we have so much going on. I think we both have ADHD.
Yeah.
And we have so much going on all the time that like we could read an email and we could say to each other, oh my God, we have to respond to this. And then something else happens, it goes out the door.
Now here's an interesting question, because today's episode is empathy versus enabling.
Yes.
It's a different Emily listener Emily. Do you think Nikki enables us?
I think it's the only way for the business to run. I think that there's no other option.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. It's just, we're not, and I will remember that I didn't respond to an email when I can't respond to that email. So I'll be either driving or if I'm in the shower.
Yes. Or for me, it's like right before I fall asleep.
Well, you know what? Yes. Right. I was talking to Nikki and I was like, you know what should exist? I think Nikki might've said this, so I don't want to steal it from her, but, like a little whiteboard in the shower, or like a note, something you could like take notes with.
Dude,
in the shower.
That is, first of all, that definitely exists. It's definitely on Temu for $1. Yeah. And
It does
We
exist.
should,
I
and
found it.
we should buy you one.
We should. I know.
Why don't you
but
have one?
Because it should be my time to not work and not think about work, you know?
You know what I like to do in the shower? This has nothing to do with anything, but I'm just saying.
That's okay.
You know what I do in the shower is, does anyone else have you like go over a conversation that you had with someone and the stuff you wish you said? Like that's what I do in the showers. I have like fake interactions. I've
done that. Yes.
I'm having like fake things I would have said, should have said, wish I said. And then I'll do nothing about, but you know, I act them out in the shower.
Yeah, that's fun. Do you act them out? Like
kind of. And then Aaron will come in and be like, who are you talking to? I'm like, no one. But it's really me, myself, and I.
Wow, that's fun. Okay, this is a question for our listeners. What are you doing in the shower?
Masturbating. Maybe they're being normal people and actually taking a shower, not us.
Not washing their hair.
Weird. Okay, but today's episode is about empathy versus enabling. Because I think that it can be gray area, right? Like so often people think that they're being supportive or caring to a friend and loved one, but we're actually enabling behavior. So what are the difference between these two things, right? That's what a lot of people ask, and is how do you know when you've crossed the line between empathy and enabling? They feel similar, and it's right. They often feel similar in the moment. What I think is interesting information is how do they feel after the moment, right? Is resentment coming up for you? Is anger coming up for you? Do you feel overwhelmed and worn out after the interaction, right? So like what starts to come up for you, I think can give you a lot of information about where it went through.
But the way I think about empathy versus enabling is like empathy is almost like your ability to kind of connect with what the person is going through, right? Like be there for them, support them. Enabling feels like more of an action, like I'm doing something to help you, or I'm fixing this for you. And I think where the line gets crossed is it goes from, okay, I can, be there for you, I can listen to you, I can understand that what you're going through is hard. And with empathy, I can help you support yourself, right? Like here are the ways that you can find the resources to help support yourself. And enabling is like, I am going to be the resource. I'm going to be the one that takes that role. And so I think that that's sometimes where the line gets crossed and where the gray area happens.
So it's also like sort of making the other person rely on you, right? Like making yourself needed. And then we're crossing into like codependency, right? When we talk about enabling, it's also codependency. These things go hand in hand.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So, and if you find yourself, and I'm sure we'll get into this with questions, but if you find yourself crossing that line often, if you're going from, okay, I can really feel for this person to, I have created a situation where this person needs me. What is it about feeling needed that feels important to you? Right? Sometimes we cross that line because feeling needed feels really good for us, right? Yeah. It feels safe for us. It feels like, okay, well, if this person needs me, then they're never going to leave. If this person needs me, then I have some sort of worth. Who am I if I am not needed by someone else? Yeah. That can be something that developed in childhood. It can be something, it might be the way that you show up in all your relationships. And so if you find that a lot of your relationships cross that line and turn into, well, I feel needed, in all of these different areas, what is it about feeling needed what does that give to me? What does it give to me? And also, is that hurting me? How is that hurting me? Is it depleting me? What's it doing to me? And do I need to show up differently in these relationships in order to work on that for myself? Yeah.
So, okay, well, that's a great, I think that's a really great intro to talk about, like, how do I do it differently, is how somebody wrote in, how to accept relationship changes due to setting boundaries / doing the work after enabling for so long. Example, having a borderline parent. So everyone's going to get so sick of us saying this. When we talk about accepting relationship changes, we're also talking about grief. I know I'm so sorry to bring it up again. It's going to change. And a lot of times when you have been enabling someone for a really long time, it feels jarring to them for you to take that away. And so sometimes people can get mad. Sometimes people can get manipulative. Sometimes people will try to cut you off or lash out in some way, right? Like, and that isn't necessarily, oh, they're this horrible person. Like sometimes it's just human nature of like, you've done all this stuff for me and all of a sudden you're ripping it away. What the fuck? And so accepting those relationship changes is one, having radical acceptance that I cannot control how the other person reacts. And then allowing myself to feel the complexity of feelings that come after that.
I think that's a lot of the reason why we stay in this place of enabling is because of the fear of how the relationship is going to change or how the other person's going to react. But the thing that's important to remember is that just because the other person reacts in a certain way, if they're angry, if they're upset, it doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. And typically people react in that way because what was, happening in your relationship with them was working for them. Of course it was, right? They needed something and you were right there to pick them up.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, that was working for them. They had someone who was constantly doing something for them, there for them at all times. But for a relationship to work, it needs to work for both people.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't working for you, if it isn't working for you, if it's wearing you down, if you need the dynamics to shift, that is what's important. So just because it's working for one person in the relationship doesn't mean that it's working.
Yeah. So, I love this question someone asked in is how do I do this with myself? Hold myself accountable, but also be gentle. And I love this because I think, wait, what's that meme that's like, it's like I told myself in 2020 I deserve a little treat, and now it's been 4 years and I've had little like I've given myself little presents every day, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's true. We can do this with ourselves. And so I guess the thing to ask yourself is like, what are you working on and what are your goals? And sometimes identifying what this means for me, right? So if one of my goals is that I do meditation 3 times a week. I want to try mindfulness. I want to try some quiet time. But then I go to do it. I say to myself, oh, I'm so tired. It makes, of course, I don't want to do it tonight. We want you to have self-compassion, but I also want you to improve yourself. And so what would it be like to try and not always run over and skip something? And so holding yourself accountable, I also think means what are my goals I'm working towards? What is the point of doing the meditation? What's the point of trying to challenge myself in this way? And then if I'm avoiding it, what's up with that?
I love what you said there because what you're speaking to is like defining your own goals. And I think sometimes we hold ourselves to this standard because it's what we think we should be doing. Right? Where, oh, I should be reading every day.
Are you reading every day?
No. First thing I gave up with. I should be reading every day, or I should like these are the things that I have been taught that I should be doing.
Yeah.
Right. And so we are sometimes hard on ourselves because we hold ourselves to this standard or this goal that maybe isn't ours. Or maybe came from this like external influence. And so I love what
like,
yeah.
I mean, I feel like you read them online, 5 ways to improve your physical, like, do this every day. The fuck. When people do that 75 hard, listen, if you've done it and it worked out for you, that's great. But I see people do this challenge.
What is it?
Okay. Oh, fuck. It's like 75 days. You have to like work out twice a day. You have to read like an app. Like it's like wild. What people do. And if you did it and it's great, I'm not talking shit on you right now. I'm just saying the comparison we do when we see a challenge like that, for most functioning people, that is not a reasonable goal.
Right. Right.
It's just not.
So I think that fits with like, can you be flexible in your goals, right? If you're trying something and it's really not fitting with your lifestyle, right? It's really not working for you and it's not actually doing what you set out to do, right?
Yeah.
So let's say it's meditation every single day. And you've been trying this meditation and it's not, and your goal is, oh, this is going to give me some time and space in the morning to kind of relax and kind of center myself. And you've been trying that goal, but you're putting this level of pressure on yourself that is actually taking away from your ability to center yourself, your ability to have time for yourself. And so your ability to be flexible
Mm-hmm.
and maybe change your goals or change what you're doing to get to your goals, I think is also really important. So I think that there's a balance there of like, okay, if my goal is to find time for myself, to center myself, originally I thought it was meditating every morning.
Yeah.
And that's not working for me. So, is there something else that I want to do to hold myself accountable to find time and space for myself in the morning? Because this wasn't working for me. So, um, I think having that ongoing conversation with yourself is really important when you are holding yourself accountable, but you're also doing it in a very loving way to say,
Yeah.
okay, this is something I want. This is something I want for myself. Okay, how am I going to get it? Maybe I have to shift. Maybe I have to change my idea of what this looks like.
I,
Um,
I
yeah,
think
go.
for me, it started, I think, I'm not someone who necessarily says that I gentle parent all the time, but I try to do gentle, positive parenting. And I think that learning about those skills was actually really helpful for all my relationships. That boundaries can be so warm and loving and still be boundaries. Right. And so here's an example of this. Your kid is having a breakdown. You had to say no to something they wanted. You're exhausted, you're overwhelmed, and you have an option, right? You can give your kid a phone and that will shut them up immediately, and then you can breathe. Or you can sit there and be embarrassed by them freaking out in the aisle at Target, and keep saying no. And I understand that probably 100% of the time we do not have the bandwidth to do the other one. But if you give the kid the phone every single time, at some point, aren't we enabling the behavior? That's a good way to look at it, right? Empathy is, I love how much you love this Lego set. I think it's so cool. You're so obsessed with Legos right now. And we're not going to buy this one today. But if you want to take a picture of it, we can talk about it. We'll take a picture of it and then we'll keep it for your birthday, Christmas, whatever comes up next, right? And those are two very different reactions. But I think one of the other things is when we've been caught in a dynamic of enabling for a really long time, when we have a low bandwidth, we're going to go with the easiest. We just are, and I get that. That doesn't mean you're a horrible person or a bad parent by any means. But sometimes, right? Like people, I feel like people always talk about this when they're like trying to teach their parents technology, and they're like, it's literally just easier for me to do it. Jen, I feel like I've heard you say this 50 times.
1,000,000 times.
And then at some point, right, what's the enabling that we get involved with? But once again, when your bandwidth is low, it's probably is quicker and faster and easier for you to just do it that way.
Yeah, I'm quick to enable with technology.
Yeah, you're very good at it. Even including with me, you do it.
Well, also because watching just like what it's, but I think this is a good thing to talk about because I think why I get so impatient watching someone else do it. So I have to, monitor and manage my own emotional reactions when someone else is learning.
Yeah.
Right. So to be able to kind of navigate that instead of jumping in and doing it for them.
Yeah. And letting it be imperfect, right? Like
Right.
the really like to say, like, this is when like if I try to do something in Canva and then Jen corrects everything that I do. Did you know I was gonna say that?
Sorry. Yeah, I know. That's the first thing I thought of. I'm so sorry. It's so hard for me.
To be fair, I don't give a fuck. But just so you know,
But
in
it's
no
a
way am I
perfect
saying this. It's just
example.
a good example, right? Now for me, I'm like, hey, that matters a lot to Jen, right? Like, I don't care that she's going to redo my work. It doesn't bring anything there for me. Now, if it did, it would also be my responsibility to say to Jen, I'm never going to learn if you keep correcting me, or I'm never going to learn if you keep like finishing my work. I don't care about this. So I'm like, yeah, please, baby, let's do it. Why not? I don't give a shit.
Thank
But
God.
in our relationships, right? But that's different because you and I have very defined tasks in our relationship, in our business relationship. But in most of our family relationships, non-business world, the roles are a little bit more blurry.
Mhm.
So you have to say, how many roles am I taking on? We hear this all the time. We talk about this. We talk about this a lot in motherhood, also in returns of maternal gatekeeping, right? This
Yes.
term of like, so you have a baby, your husband's totally freaked out. Keep in mind, most people become dads and they've literally never like held a baby or changed a diaper ever. Where like women, often had like, cousins, or they babysat, or it's just like normal, or they play dolls. You know what I mean? Like, so you have this husband that comes in, he's totally mortified, is so freaked out, and you're like, oh, I'll just do it. And then you're so effing resentful, but we didn't give them time to be imperfect at it.
Whoa.
That's maternal gatekeeping, yeah.
I saw this thing on I forget, it was felt like once a reel or TikTok or something. And this woman was talking about like microfeminism and like doing these like micro feminist things. And she was like, my micro feminist thing is that, I when a heterosexual couple walks in, I like shove my baby towards the man because it's always like being given to the woman. I just shove it towards the man.
Even if we're visiting friends that have a new baby, and I'll like say to Aaron, like, oh, like, do you want to hold him? He's like, no. Like, still, he's like, no interest in holding other people's babies. Like, no, even though he's now a father, and like, I think at first they're scared. They're like, I'm going to break this thing. I don't know what to do with this crying thing. Now, even though he has been a father and knows what to do, he's like, that's still not for me. No interest. Yeah, he's good with that. Okay. How to approach family members that enable other family members. Oof. No one's gonna like my response, so I'll let you go first.
Hear it. No, let's hear it. I want to hear that one.
Is it really your business?
I was thinking. So, okay, I was thinking that was my first.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Instinct. However, does enabling them affect
the family system?
The family system, right? And then it ends up affecting you.
We need a lot more information.
Need more information. And okay, here's what I would say to that. So let's say that's the case.
But even if someone else is enabling and not setting boundaries with someone, that doesn't mean you can't, right? So let's say, let's go with an example, right? Sister-in-law struggling with addiction. Mother-in-law is like, doesn't matter. We got to be here with her 100%, but you don't want your kids around it. You are allowed to say, hey, we're still not comfortable with this. Like, we're happy to see all you guys with just the adults, but we're not going to bring the kids around.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Mother-in-law gets mad at you. All right, then I guess she's mad at you.
Yeah.
One of the things we have to be okay with is people getting pissed off.
And the question is, how to approach family member that enables the other family member. So let's say mother-in-law says, oh, like, how could you, blah, blah, blah. Say, listen, I understand that this is the relationship that you are willing to have with, who are we saying? The sister-in-law, whoever. Yes. Here are my boundaries in that. Yeah. I think it will help her to set these boundaries, but you get to make that decision.
Yeah. And listen, when you're coming from a family system that's very closed or very enmeshed, or has a lot of loyalty stuff about what they believe we should do as families, this is going to be really hard to communicate because it's not going to make sense. And so then everyone will say, you'll have a client that come in there, they say, well, then I look like the bitch. Well, then I guess you do. I guess so.
I guess you do.
And still, is that better for you? Right?
Yep. All right. What do we got? Dealer's choice.
Here's an interesting one.
Yeah.
What about when my partner is stressed from work and wants to rewind? Be kind. Rewind. And let me start over.
No one's going to know what that means if they
are.
Be kind, rewind only if you watched VHS tapes. That is the only if you went to Blockbuster
listening to this podcast.
Some people will. Some people will know. Be kind, rewind.
If you actually didn't know, can you tell us? Because I'm just interested.
Yeah, let us know. I'm curious.
Blockbuster was everywhere, though, right? Like, it wasn't just like a Northeast. Yeah, it was everywhere.
Oh, I think it was everywhere. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Wait, you know what's so funny is today on my remember we got on a Zoom earlier, you're like, oh, look at your Roku in the background. For some reason, you commented on that. They're like the screen of my TV.
Because they were like flying around.
They were flying. Cool. Blockbuster was an app that's now like loaded. Blockbuster on demand. So that means like there's like one motherfucker keeping Blockbuster. He's like, I will not be giving up on this. Okay, I'm gonna go back to this question.
Okay.
What about when my partner is stressed from work and wants to unwind after the day, but I still need their presence at home? This is such a good question,
Ooh,
right?
so
So
good.
let's pretend your partner has a super stressful job. You had more of like a cool, chill day. Maybe your work is less stressed. Who the fuck knows, right? Okay. You get home for your partner. Your partner gets home and they're like, I'm so stressed out. I'm so overwhelmed. And they just like want to be alone. But then you're kind of like, well, wait a second. Now I'm cooking dinner. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. So here's what I would say. Once again, something we talked about before is that we blame the system, not the problem. I guess we have a system issue with the stress at work and the post work responsibilities. So is it that 2 days a week we order out and everyone gets to go have alone time? Is it that we prep meals? Is it that like what do we have to do to change the system? And that is very different. That's the empathy to be able to say, "Hey hun, I know that you're really stressed out at work. Here are some ideas I have to make the week feel a little bit in tune with both of our needs and the home's needs." That's really different than, okay, well, you go take your alone time and then you doing everything and then resenting them, which is, I think, what happens the most.
I think the really important piece of what you're saying too is that having this conversation, not in the moment, is really important. Sometimes we talk about having almost like a business meeting
Yep.
for how your relationship is going to run the rest of the week. And we know that's not romantic and it's not sexy, but it will help build the romance and the sexy part of your relationship
Yes.
if you have everything else running smoothly.
Yeah.
And the only way to create that system to make sure that things run smoothly is if you communicate about it when it's not happening. So
Yeah.
Sunday, whether it's a Sunday, you sit down, you have your coffee and you say, hey, listen, let's talk about how this week is going to run. I understand that when you come home from work, like you really need to decompress.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about that, because and then I'm making dinner. So like, let's come up with a plan for this together. What happens when we don't sit down and talk about that is that we end up turning against each other instead of working with each other. You
Yeah.
want to continue to remain on the same team. It is so easy in times of stress to turn on each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so for
Mm-hmm.
you to be very proactive about what this looks like week to week, and listen, it could change. It might change, schedules change,
Yeah.
you stop making it, whatever it is, be very flexible in it and be willing to sit down and talk about it and say, how do we want this to work throughout the week?
Jen, what's something you enable your partner with?
Technology.
How
about you?
I mean, I think with a lot of parenthood stuff that like I'm always like, there's like 2 weeks. Someone should invent. Here's an idea. Somebody wants to make millions of dollars. You ready for it? I'm going to give this away to whoever you wants
You're
it.
so nice.
Okay. There was 1 week off before the start of school and the end of camp that there was no camps given anywhere, at least in our area. So that week, because I'm the person who pre-plans ahead and looks at my calendar, we've talked about this before, I'm the one who starts thinking, oh shit, there's no camp this week. I better start getting some childcare together. And so typically I take on the role. And so I do a little bit of enabling that Aaron doesn't have to do any of that work. The issue with that is that I also hold resentment with it, as opposed to me just being like, hey, like this is my role in the family. He takes this other role. And that is what becomes problematic. Right? Like that, when I check in with myself and say, like, ooh, like I noticed that I gave him a dig the other night. And was like, well, that must be nice. You didn't have to do that. And I was like, ooh, she's
she's
spicy tonight.
spicy.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah. Which usually if I'm spicy like that, it's telling me there's a problem.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Dealer's choice.
Dealer's choice. Okay. Husband has social anxiety. How to support him without losing our social life?
I love that.
I love this question.
Yeah. What do you think, Miss Introvert?
I guess I would want to understand what are his expectations of you and what are your expectations
Mm-hmm.
of your relationship in terms of being social? Because I think there's a pretty easy fix, right? If he's like, listen, I just want to stay in tonight, like you go out. I think that we come into relationships with this idea and this expectation of, we're going to make these plans and we're going to go out as a couple together and we're going to go to these events together. And sometimes that might change, right? So it might be the case that like one of us is more social than the other person. And so I think having the conversation around like, well, what, how much social time do you need? What does that social time look like? Because I'm also wondering if your partner, like, do they want to see more people? Like, do they want to have more plans? When you say social anxiety, is it that they want to go out, but their anxiety is keeping them from going out? Or do they actually just not want as much social time? So I would really get to the bottom of, or really understand what your partner's social anxiety is, like really get to know it in a lot of ways. Because I think the more you understand it, the more you guys can talk about it and figure out what does this look like for us as a couple. Because without losing our social life, right, that you clearly want a social life together. And I think you have to figure out what that looks like. And it might look different than what your expectations have been of like, this is what I want our social life to look like as a couple.
Okay, I just really love this question.
Tell me.
Elderly widow neighbor asks for help from you all the time. Her daughter lives out of state. She sounds lonely.
Oh.
So you can't help all the time, right? That's not going to work out. So I think like the communication around saying to this person, like, hey, like there's lots of stuff I'm happy to help with. Here are the things I feel comfortable helping you with. Would you like me to help you find someone else that can help you with the other stuff, right? Or you can just say like, no, I'm unable to do that, which is really hard because it sounds like you also probably feel kind of bad for this person. And this person might also be really lonely. Right? Hey, I can't do that, but you know what I could do is we could have a glass of wine together on the front porch.
And what you said, that, hey, I can't help you, but I can find someone who can help you. That is the difference between empathy and enabling, is that you are helping them to help themselves or to find resources to help themselves, as opposed to every time they ask, I have to go over there. I have to be the one to fill that hole for them. That is the difference there.
It's empowering them to do it themselves, right? Empowering them to know there's other resources and ways to get that.
Exactly.
Let's do one more before we have to go to Dear Jen and M, and I'm going to choose it because I just want to know.
Okay. I love
it. Family members living with you for free to quote unquote get on their feet.
I would give them a timeline.
Here's what we can offer. Here's what we can offer you. Okay. Here's what we, we're happy to have you live with us. Well, you guys get back on your feet. Here's when we're able to offer it until.
Yep.
And here are the things we need from you in exchange, right? We need you guys to help with laundry or help with cleaning of the house, right? Like free might be monetary, but it doesn't have to be that there is not energy.
And be very clearly defined boundaries of,
yes,
here's the deal. Here's what our expectations are, whether it be here's what you're helping out with and here's our timeline. We can keep kind of looking at that. We can keep talking about it. But once again, you're helping them to help themselves. You're not just saying, okay, live here whenever, and then we'll figure it out. You're setting very clear boundaries. And here's the thing, clear is kind. The clearer you set those boundaries, the less resentful you're going to get in that relationship. Boundaries help you maintain your relationships.
Yes.
They help bring you closer to people. And I think that's a common misconception that boundaries, people believe that boundaries separate you when they actually make you feel closer to each other.
Dear Jen and M.
You want me to read it?
Oh, yeah.
Of course I will. Dear Em and Jen, how do you deal with parents that love you, but are hard to love? My mom struggles with mental health and physical illness, but does things that don't make it easier on herself. She enables my siblings, 14 and 20, to just be lazy and do nothing to help her. She then complains to me all the time, but never takes my advice. My dad, who had custody of me as a child, I love very much. But after a summer cross-country road trip with him, my eyes have opened to some things. He's a Republican. I respect his views, but will literally go into screaming rants about his views versus mine. He just makes comments and does things that put me on edge. I don't know what to do.
Boundaries.
People are going to get just as tired with us saying boundaries as they do with us saying grief.
This is way Nikki works for us. Jen will say Nicola.
Yeah, like Ricola.
Boundaries. Okay. Both of these are boundary situation, right? Your dad is probably an amazing father to you. We have no doubt about that. But it sounds like when it comes to politics, you don't agree with stuff and it's not helping your relationship. So you think the conversation with your dad specifically is around, Dad, I love you so much. Growing up with you was wonderful. You've done so much for me. And I'm worried how much it's hurting our relationship to talk about politics. Do you think we could have a relationship where this subject isn't part of it? Right? I think so often we're trying to this fighting over politics, like this shit's not getting better. It's just getting more and more divided. So you have to say to yourself, what is the point of talking about this? If we cannot have a conversation with curiosity and insight and love and empathy, then why fucking talk about it with our loved ones? It doesn't matter.
I also think people believe that in order to be close with someone, you have to be able to talk about everything.
Nope.
And that's just simply not true.
Yes.
There are certain topics that are not going to help your relationship.
Yeah.
They could hurt your relationship.
Mm-hmm. I have, there's someone in my life who is pro-life. I love this person very, very much. And I am very pro-choice and have a lot of feelings around reproductive rights and all that, especially with IVF. And that's who they are. That's it doesn't matter. We've had conversations around it. I respect their viewpoints. They respect mine. And we just do not agree. And so it's just not something we talk about anymore.
Which makes sense.
And it makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense. And in terms of, we mentioned the dad situation, but the mom situation, right? It sounds like you're trying to help your mom by giving her advice that she's not taking.
And that ain't working.
And that's not working. And so my first question for you would be, what is it like for you that your mom is constantly complaining to you and it sounds like dumping on you in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
My guess is this is wearing you down because, I don't think you would write in otherwise. And so what kind of boundaries do you need with your mom so that you can take care of yourself? Because that sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the flow of care is off.
Yeah. And I don't think you should give advice anymore, actually. I think that it just feels worse to give advice that people don't take. And so here's this is the empathy versus enabling, right? You can have empathy. I'm really sorry, Mom. That sounds really hard. And I got to run off to a meeting. You can have love and compassion and also maybe say to your mom, Mom, they're my siblings too. And I can't keep talking about this. Because I would imagine it also hurts your relationship with your siblings for your mom to be used as the person's vent. That's the triangulation. It hurts the family system for there to be triangulation. Mom needs someone else to talk to that's not you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Shrink Chicks.
We'll see you back here next week for another session.
In the meantime, if you want a question answered or a topic discussed, follow us on Instagram at ShrinkChicks. And if you're looking to get connected with a therapist like us to start or continue your therapeutic journey, visit thetherapygroup.com. Just fill out a contact form on our website, and we will personally match you with one of our amazing therapists. And for all of our therapists and group practice owners out there, we also offer group practice consulting.
And if you're looking to support yourself further and support our show, check out our amazing merch options at shrinkchicks.com/merch and our Know Yourself, Grow Yourself journal on Amazon. Also, if you'd be so kind, we'd love a rating review and for you to share with a friend or an enemy or a mother-in-law, honestly, whoever needs it, so that we can keep reaching more people on our mission to bring mental health topics to your ears every week.
Thanks for being here with us. And don't forget, to grow yourself, you got to know yourself.